The air crackled with a nervous energy, the kind that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. A group of teenagers huddled together, drawn to the forbidden allure of the unknown. It promised a thrill, a glimpse beyond the veil of reality, but what awaited them in the shadows was far more sinister than they could have ever imagined. It started with a simple invitation: talk to me. But the spirits they awakened wouldn't be so easily dismissed. This is a story about grief, desperation, and the terrifying consequences of playing with forces beyond our comprehension. The flickering candlelight painted grotesque shadows on the faces of the teenagers gathered in the dimly lit basement. The air was thick with anticipation, a heady mix of fear and excitement. A severed hand, embalmed and eerily lifelike, lay on a table in the center of the room. Its pale fingers curled inwards, beckoning. Mia, a girl haunted by the recent loss of her mother, stared at the hand, transfixed. A wave of grief washed over her, a familiar ache that had taken root in her soul. She longed to hear her mother's voice again, to feel her touch, even if it was just a fleeting moment in the ethereal realm. The rules were simple, they had been told. Talk to me, you say to the hand, and a spirit will answer. I let you in, and the spirit can possess you. But the possession must be broken within 90 seconds, lest the spirit become tethered to the host. One by one, the teenagers took turns, their faces contorting in a grotesque mockery of human expression as they channeled spirits unknown. The room echoed with guttural voices, whispers of forgotten languages, and the laughter of entities long since departed. Mia watched, her heart pounding in her chest, a maelstrom of emotions swirling within her. The pull of the hand was irresistible, the promise of connection to her deceased mother too tempting to ignore. When it was Mia's turn, the room seemed to hold its breath. A sense of foreboding settled upon them, heavy and suffocating. She grasped the hand, its cold, leathery touch sending a shiver down her spine. Her voice, barely a whisper, trembled as she spoke the words, "Talk to me." The hand twitched in her grasp, a jolt of energy coursing through her. A cold wind swept through the basement, extinguishing the candle and plunging them into darkness. A chorus of whispers erupted, swirling around them like a malevolent vortex. Panic surged through Mia as she fumbled for the candle, her breath catching in her throat. The whispers intensified, growing louder, closer. They were inside her head now, scratching at the edges of her consciousness, threatening to break through. Light flickered back into existence as someone relit the candle. Mia gasped, her vision blurring. A figure stood before her, shrouded in shadows, its eyes glowing with an eerie red light. "Mama," Mia whispered, her voice choked with emotion. But the figure only shook its head, a low growl emanating from its throat. It lunged, its cold, clammy hands reaching for her. Mia screamed, the sound echoing through the darkness as she stumbled backward. Strong arms grabbed her, pulling her away from the spectral figure. The whispers faded, replaced by the concerned voices of her friends. "Mia, are you okay?" Jade, her best friend, asked, her voice laced with worry. Mia blinked, her eyes adjusting to the candlelight. The spectral figure had vanished, but the feeling of dread lingered, a cold weight in the pit of her stomach. The group emerged from the basement, shaken and subdued. The thrill of the séance had curdled into something dark and unsettling. They had crossed a line, and there was no going back. Mia couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The entity that had possessed her wasn't her mother. It was something else, something malevolent, and it had left its mark on her, a lingering sense of unease that gnawed at her sanity. The days that followed were a blur of nightmares and unsettling visions. Mia found herself plagued by hallucinations, fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures lurking at the edge of her vision. The world around her felt distorted, as if reality itself was fraying at the edges. She confided in Jade, desperate for reassurance, but even her best friend couldn't dispel the growing darkness that threatened to consume her. Driven by a compulsion she couldn't explain, Mia sought out the embalmed hand again. She needed answers, even if they lay in the perilous realm of the spirits. Alone in her room, with the curtains drawn tight against the encroaching night, Mia performed the ritual. The hand felt familiar in her grasp, its cold touch a perverse comfort. "Talk to me," she whispered, her voice raspy with fear. The shadows in the room deepened, twisting and contorting into grotesque shapes. The whispers returned, swirling around her like a swarm of angry bees. This time, There was no mistaking the figure that materialized before her. It was her mother, her face pale and drawn, her eyes filled with a mixture of love and despair. "Mama," Mia cried, tears streaming down her face. The spectral image of her mother reached out, her touch sending a jolt of icy energy through Mia's body. "Help me," she whispered, her voice a mournful echo. "Help Riley." Mia's heart lurched. Riley, Jade's younger brother, had been acting strangely ever since the séance. He was withdrawn, his eyes glazed over with a distant look. Now, Mia understood. He was possessed, just like she had been. Riley lay in a hospital bed, his body racked with tremors. His eyes darted back and forth, wild with terror. Mia watched, her heart breaking. She had to help him, but how? The answer, chillingly clear, came to her in a flash of intuition. She had to contact Riley in the spirit world, to confront the entities that held him captive. She snuck into Riley's room, the embalmed hand tucked into her pocket. The air was thick with the sterile scent of disinfectant and the underlying hum of medical equipment. Mia placed the hand on Riley's chest, its touch sending a ripple of energy through his body. "Talk to me," she whispered, her voice trembling with desperation. The room plunged into darkness. The shadows danced around her, twisting and contorting into monstrous shapes. The whispers returned, a cacophony of voices vying for her attention. A portal opened before her, a swirling vortex of colors and light. Mia stepped through, her heart pounding in her chest. The spirit realm was a chaotic landscape, a kaleidoscope of shifting landscapes and distorted realities. The air was thick with the stench of decay and the mournful cries of lost souls. Mia searched frantically for Riley, her every sense heightened. The whispers guided her, leading her deeper into the heart of darkness. She found him trapped in a cage of twisted metal and bone, surrounded by spectral figures that tormented him relentlessly. Mia charged, her rage lending her strength. She fought through the throng of spirits, her hands glowing with the spectral light. She reached the cage and ripped it open, freeing Riley from his tormentors. He collapsed into her arms, his body weak and trembling. But as Mia held Riley, a chilling realization dawned on her. The whispers were telling her something, a grim truth she had been trying to ignore. Her mother's death hadn't been an accident. It had been a suicide, a desperate act driven by forces she couldn't comprehend. And Riley was in danger, not from the possessing spirits, but from her mother's desperate need to reunite with her daughter. The guilt hit Mia like a physical blow. Her mother's despair, her unbearable pain, had spilled over into the spirit realm, creating a vortex that threatened to consume them all. Mia knew what she had to do. She had to break the cycle, to sever the connection that bound her mother's spirit to the living world. And the only way to do that was to sacrifice herself. She pushed Riley toward the portal, her voice hoarse with urgency. "Go back. Tell Jade. Tell everyone. I love them." Riley stumbled through the portal, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. Mia turned to face the spectral image of her mother, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, Mama," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." The spectral image of her mother reached for her, her eyes filled with a mixture of love and sorrow. Mia stepped back, her voice firm. "I release you, Mama. Find peace." And with that, Mia plunged into the heart of the vortex, her body dissolving into 1,000 points of light. The spirit realm shuddered, the shadows recoiling from her sacrifice. Mia opened her eyes, gasping for breath. She was lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by the sterile white walls of a recovery room. Riley sat beside her, his face pale but relieved. He told her what had happened, how he had returned from the spirit realm and collapsed, unconscious. He had been hospitalized, but he was going to be okay. Mia nodded, a weak smile spreading across her lips. She was glad he was safe. But as she looked around the room, a chilling realization dawned on her. No one else was there. No Jade, no Max, no one. And when she looked down at her hands, they were cold and pale, her fingers contorted into a grotesque mockery of life. She was trapped, a prisoner in the spirit realm, condemned to wander the shadows forever. And as the darkness closed in around her, she saw a hand outstretched, beckoning her forward. "Talk to me," the whispers hissed.